how would you describe the general state of consciousness on the planet at this present time?
Hopeful. Yeah. Do you want me to repeat?
Well, like how would you? Yeah. Actually, if you could paraphrase a bit, but,
yeah.
but also it's like how would you describe like where we're at, as opposed to where we're going, but where we're at, where it's at right now, this moment in time.
Well, obviously we're always in a state of transformation. Any minute, any time in history is in a state of transformation. It's just if we have to measure what is the potential of transformation now versus 100 years ago, of course our potential is much greater. And it is so, I think, partly not because as humans we have grown spiritually, but also technology has a great input in this. And what's happened now through technology, I think, many people who have been working as small pockets with small amount of people, suddenly they become accessible, available to larger humanity, and this way consciousness has no other way but to grow. So any little thing, any little bit, any person who's bringing some awareness helps that. And there's been a statement by Gurdjieff, and this is in probably in the 40s, when he was doing his work, 30s, 40s, that if there's 200 enlightened people on this planet, the whole consciousness will be transformed. And I think we're heading there.
So it's almost a matter of critical mass. Is that almost?
It's always, it is, because it's, and I remember Osho saying that it's a very difficult task for one person because the heaviness of unconsciousness is such that it's almost impossible for one person to carry that load. And obviously the load is a lot lighter now because each person taking responsibility for themselves, for their own transformation, helps the load. And what is the load? The load is the pain and the suffering that we've chosen to live with for, I can't even tell how long. So it's all about suffering that is created by the ego. That's what we're fighting against.
So what is it about this human species that has this sort of need for conflict in order to gain awareness?
That's inbuilt. We all come with that. We all come from the source. We know the source, you know the home, and then we forget. And whether we're aware or not, there is a longing in each person to return home, to come back to the source. And that's the seed that everybody carries. Some people, take longer, some people take shorter, but regardless, it's a process. It's a process of evolution. So each person transforming their own unconsciousness helps to transform the unconsciousness within the universe, not just on this planet.
So what is the responsibility of each individual? What should each individual be doing to sort of nurture that consciousness?
Each individual needs to find their original source, their original face. This is what the Zen people say. Find the face before you were born. And that's the original face, which means that's the face of the being, which has no conditionings, no beliefs, no religious conditionings, no social conditionings. There is no ego attached to it. And what is that being? Within that being is pure consciousness, is the 0 point energy, as the scientists call it now. And within that zero, you know that you are the universe. You are God. You don't have to pray to any God. You don't have to follow anyone. All you have to do is find it within yourself.
So what are the practical steps for people that maybe are listening to this? I'm hoping that it'll add more to the push towards people becoming, at least getting that spark to initially start examining themselves in some way. What's the first initial thing that people should be doing?
Well, the first initial thing that people should be doing is to look inside. Because normally we look outside. We're trained to look outside. We're from very beginning, we go to school and we're trained for the outside. We're trained for the world. We're not trained to live our life and to enjoy our life and to find what our gifts are. We're trained to compare. We're trained to succeed in the way that society deems what success means. And obviously, in order to do that, we have to look outside. So the first thing on a spiritual path would be to start looking in. And once we start looking in, that's how we start discovering all the areas of who am I? Why am I behaving this way? Why am I acting this way? Why do I feel sadness? Why do I feel jealousy? Why do I feel competitiveness? Why am I trying to be better than somebody else? It's all trends of the ego, and this is how we're going to understand that, okay, this is just a man-made substance, which is called the ego, and there's something more than that. And as we start going deeper in, we suddenly discover, oh, there's such a thing as bliss. There's such a thing as an unconditional love that I don't have to manipulate. And suddenly discovering that actually I'm not alone, I only think I'm alone. And the whole existence is there supporting me. And that's the journey to oneness and to love. There is no other way. Just to talk about oneness is never going to bring anybody to oneness. We need to really look inside to see what prevents us from being in oneness. Because if we don't remove those layers that are sort of clocking the truth within, we're not going to find the truth. Because it's the ego. That ego always likes to create stories and can create a story of oneness and think, well, okay, this is, I feel good, but something deep down is not really feeling that oneness.
So do you have moments of conflict anymore? Do you have moments where you're in that little you could go either way?
I don't have any internal conflict. The conflict outside is always going to be there. But the internal conflict ends when there's an acceptance of outside. When there's a full acceptance, then there is no conflict anymore within. And when there's no conflict within, you don't carry any baggage. And of course, when there's an outside conflict, which is inevitable, then you can simply solve that conflict with that awareness from within. Then you don't add to the conflict.
So you have to be a participant.
That's right. And when you're not participating, you're not adding to the conflict, that's how you resolve the conflict. Or you think of what could be the ways, what is actually even a better way, what is causing the conflict, what are the lessons within the conflict.
So was there a moment when that all came to shape for you, or was it a process?
For me, I was fortunate enough to be with a master, that Osho, whose practical methods, actually, the active meditations, have helped me tremendously. And through them, I came to experience, quote unquote, what Buddha calls the Enlightenment. In other words, experiencing the body, mind, emotion, everything dissolving into light, just pure light, with an awareness, consciousness, knowingness that the whole universe is made of joy and the I does not exist. In other words, stepping out of the ego I. So with that, you sort of have a big laughter, seeing how ridiculous you've been trying to maintain it or struggle through it.
And that's the paradox, isn't it? That you are developing a self at the same time you're actually releasing the ego. Is that right? I mean,
absolutely. The ego needs to be developed. This is what I write in my book, that the ego needs to be developed before it could drop. And when the ego is wounded, it cannot drop itself. Only a healthy ego can drop itself. Just like a fruit, when it's ripe, it falls from the tree. And unfortunately, in the New Age spiritual world, we misunderstand, we don't understand. Many people struggle with their ego and they think it's bad. There's nothing bad about anything. It's a matter of, is it healthy? has it reached the point where you can actually understand it and drop it? Because if you haven't, if you have holes, if you have wounds, if you feel insecurity, if you feel jealousy, competitiveness, if you feel that something wrong with you, that's the wounded ego, and you need to start looking to see, why do I feel this way? Why am I insecure? Why am I not living in my strength? So that's why I call it, the subtitle of my book is Healing into Consciousness, because through healing into consciousness is how the ego develops, and it has to go through development in each of our chakra centers, and the higher it gets, and we cannot just say, well, okay, I'm going to work on my higher chakras, and sex is bad, this is bad, that is bad. Then part of the ego still remains unfulfilled. It still remains immature. In order for the wholeness to happen, everything needs to mature. So yes, consciousness will develop simultaneously as the ego develops.
Cool. So how would you describe the parts that make up our being? Would you say that there's a, well, how would you describe the parts that make up a human consciousness? Obviously there's an ego aspect to us, but there must be something separate in us from the ego that is still part of us. So what would you describe the makeup of a human?
Well, there's many things. What makes us human, of course, is our emotions, is our thoughts and our emotions. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be human. Animals live in their essence. We also live in our essence, but we don't know it. Animals don't have consciousness in terms of self-awareness. So what makes us human, that we have the potential to become conscious of who we are, which animals don't. They live in their essence without that potential to know who they are. So the human has the potential to become God. In other words, how does the human become God? Is by understanding, by realizing that I am God, I'm not separate. What keeps me separate is the ego, is my training, is my mind, my beliefs that keep me thinking that I'm separate. So that's the blessing of being a human. And at the same time, the curse, then when you don't remember that, when you don't know that, then you just destroy life.
How would you link it all up? You're saying we're emotions. How does emotions relate to our bodies, and our emotions to our bodies, to our ego? How would you connect all those dots and our essence?
Well, first of all, the mind and the emotions is what makes up the ego. The body is a neutral machine, and existence created, and don't ask me how and who and where, it's just evolution creates it in my mind. There's no one person sitting and masterminding, I'm going to create a human body. So through evolution, the body is like a mechanism which can house the energy. So we are incarnating in the body. With that energy, within the energy, there is, if we look into the universe is a huge mass of energy. But that energy very greatly is unconscious. And once that part of the energy incarnates in a human body, then through the process of living is how the transformation begins. And that's how slowly the energy starts transforming into self-awareness, awareness of itself. When we don't have the awareness of itself, the energy doesn't have it, that's what we call unconscious. Once the energy becomes aware of itself and becomes conscious, that's how it releases back into the universe, because then the body is left behind. Sooner or later, everybody leaves the body. You can leave the body fully conscious, and you don't need to come back and learn more lessons. Or if you haven't learned and you're still attached, the ego is attached to the physical world, obviously you have to come back to continue. But once a soul reaches the point where they've completed their journey with an understanding that I understand this was a purpose, this was the purpose of my living, my body, is to know to know that I am the universe. And I could be anywhere in the universe. In other words, there is no death. Death does not exist. Death only exists within the ego mind person sort of identity. So once there is no death, then the whole universe is open. You could be anywhere in the universe. You can travel. It's like, and you don't even need spaceships to travel. You can be anywhere you want. And not only that, once you become conscious that only consciousness exists, and things materialize as a result of creation. So the joy that arises out of creation is what the whole universe is made of. And creation never ceases to happen. There's always new things that manifest. And things manifest out of nothingness. When a human has a vision, that comes out of nothingness. That nothingness is where consciousness is, where the universe is. And then we materialize it, we put it into motion, the vision, and then it becomes a material reality. You can envision a building, and then because you envisioned, you see it, then you can draw the plans, and you can get other people involved and bring their skills, and you start building the building. And suddenly, oh, there is a building, but it started from a vision. And this is how the universe also works. It works through that vision that just arises out of nowhere.
So you're saying basically that and we are the result of the universe trying to be conscious of itself.
That's right. That's right. So each single person, as they transform their own unconsciousness, they help to expand the universe. Because everybody has their own journey. Everybody has learned different skills. They all have had different experiences. This lifetime, other lifetimes. And as a result, everybody brings a gift, very uniquely theirs. And this is how we create an orchestra. Orchestra cannot happen with one instrument.
How would you describe the difference between male and female energy as far as experiencing life? It seems to me that women have a greater capacity for acceptance than males do. Would you say that there's an actual difference in energy between male and female energy and how they experience the world?
There's definitely a difference. The yin-yang energies, yes. The females are more emotional based, they're more feeling based. And male is more thinking based, doing based. So, and both are necessary. And not only there's difference between a male body and a female body, there's also a difference. Each person, each male and each female body carries those two polarities within themselves. That's why in relationships we attract or get attracted to the opposite sex that represents what's happening in our own internal male or female energies, because we need to be conscious and learn the lessons we need to learn. And each single person is a mirror to what we need to learn internally. So in that sense, to create that inner wholeness, the whole work is to create the inner wholeness. That's why relationships are so important. Without them, it's hard for us to really see ourselves.
Yeah. In those moments where you're really struggling with infinity and self, right? And there's a lot of fear involved and holding on. Obviously, I guess that would be the sense of the ego self. What's a practical way of releasing that? I know that the concept that you need to become in harmony. But what's the practical method of actually doing that?
I'm glad you asked that question, because methods have been devised for centuries, especially for that purpose. Just left on our own devices without methods, it's very difficult. And once in a while it might happen, then a soul who is very advanced might come to experience something of that divine energy. Or divinity. And many people do, but they stay unconscious still of the self. There are methods, and meditation is obviously that big M that is something that is, I would say, the most important in a way for us to incorporate in our daily life. In this day and age, we have active meditations, the ones that have been devised by the Buddha of this century. The Vipassana silent meditation was devised by the Buddha 2,500 years ago. This time we have another Buddha, Osho, who's devised the active meditations, which are very in tune with our current lifestyle. And we're very active, we need activity, our body needs to be active, it needs to release the stresses before we can come and find that inner stillness, which is very difficult to do just by silent sitting. In my experience with active meditations, because I started practicing them since my mid-20s, and that's what I like to teach, and very recently even devised one active meditation myself, alongside with my healing method, which is another way, an active way to actually, I should call it an active healing process, which involves expression of what is suppressed in the body and in the energy. Through expression, it's very easy then to release those clouds versus just churn within the energy, thinking and feeling them. Then once the clouds are released, it's very easy to start seeing the being, or start recognizing the silence, the still point. Because we all talk about the silence, we all talk about that presence in the now, but how to get there is the difficulty. Now, with active meditations, with my method, it's very simple to get there. And obviously, in evolution, existence brings new methods, brings new people that have some experience or have some understanding, and it's a step by step. So it's a preparation that we evolve to, that we can, accept that, okay, maybe I can try this, like crazy methods. Literally, crazy methods, because the mind would say in 50 years ago that people wouldn't have been able to really accept such things. What do you mean I have to, keep expressing just a thought form and exhale out of, after I'm expressing it? Or what do you mean I have to jump up and down and with the sound who? That's crazy. What do you mean I have to shout and yell? So those things, people are more understanding that there's a madness inside me. I'm living that madness. And if you really look deeply, everybody's carrying a madhouse within them, and it's so nicely covered up. And the moment somebody's just starts to throw some steam, we send them to anger management. And this is another ridiculous thing. You can't manage anger. You can only transform anger. Why is the anger there in the first place?
What do you make of the whole Occupy movement? That there seems to be a real polarity in the world these days, where it's getting quite obvious that the camps, where there's people still fighting for what is, and people that really want to change everything.
Well, first of all, I think any kind of a movement, it basically shows that people have come to a certain place where they're saying enough is enough. So it's not that there was no awareness that only a small group of people hold the power. There was awareness in some people. Now with that kind of movement, that awareness gets more into the lay person's consciousness. So in that sense, those movements are helpful to raise consciousness, and it's all about consciousness. I don't see that anything can change without changing consciousness. It's like when you know that you've been oppressed, when you know that there's something else, suddenly you're going to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to do this anymore. Why have I been doing this? I thought that this was the right thing to do, but now I see that I've been fooled. So do I want to continue being fooled? that's all about consciousness, because if the person wasn't conscious, they wouldn't come to that awareness, and therefore they wouldn't do anything to change their life.
And it's back to the old saying that really we learn through suffering. I guess the harder things get, the more people really have to examine what's going on, I imagine. It forces us to, right? I'm just going to adjust this for a second. It keeps getting brighter, and then a little bit duller back there, and I want to make sure I'm not overexposing here.
Kindy, can I have my, I think I have my little tea there, just some water.
Back in the kitchen still?
Yeah, it's in there, please.
It won't be much longer.
Yeah.
But thank you very much. You're a very eloquent speaker.
I'm still trying to brush up on that, but thank you.
On the talking part?
Yeah.
Is that right? Well, this is a good exercise. Then.
Yeah.
In what way do you feel
because
you're not?
You know, when I'm doing my healing work,
yeah.
it's you know,
something else.
It's practical. No chitter chatter. It's just get on with it.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But when I have to intellectually try and explain something, yeah, it's a train. Everything is a training. Like Buddha used to say, when you have an awareness, try to articulate it. Because when we don't articulate it, then it becomes very difficult, because the brain needs to adjust to those words to articulate things.
And I think that's why everyone needs to become, well, not everyone, but that's why people become teachers. Is because once you've learned something, that's the final step of really solidifying it, isn't it? Within yourself, is to actually teach it now, to speak it and to teach it.
Yes.
So I guess this is all part of your process of growth too, like all of us, eh? We're all evolving. For me, this is it too, just even talking and asking questions, it's part of my solidifying myself, right? It's all.
That's right. That's right. Everything we're doing. This is the irony. Every single thing we do is the bottom line. People say, "What is the purpose of life?" I want to find my purpose. There's only one purpose in my mind. Every single person's purpose is to become conscious. What we do is a different. We do different things to get to that single purpose. There's one top of the mountain that we're all trying to reach.
And you obviously believe in the community, the concept that we're doing this together. It's not an individual thing. I guess in a way it is, but it's a community.
Oh, it's absolutely, because like you were mentioning earlier, and Buddha had made this statement as well, that once you find the truth, once you wake up, don't be like a pool. He distinguished two kinds of people. He called them one kind he called them arhatas, and the other kind he called them bodhisattvas. And arhatas are those who, once they wake up, they feel very content within their experience, and they're like a pool. People go to them, then they're happy to share, but they don't overextend themselves. And then those are the second kind is the bodhisattvas that they're like a river, and they like to make an effort to go and share as much as possible. So he used to tell his disciples, be like bodhisattvas, because the world needs every bit of that water that everybody's thirsting for.
So contribute, I suppose. But is that a predilection of our being, or is that just a predilection of? In other words, are some people just meant to be pools and some people meant to be rivers, or should everybody be a river? It's a different sort of training. Your path, where you come from, how your path has been. Some people, they're just happy, content to just be within their own awareness, and that's it. They're happy with it. And not that they're not contributing, in a sense that they still contribute to those who come to them. They radiate that energy. But then there's those who can feel the pain of the planet, and they feel that they want to make an extra effort. I personally, at this point in time, I can feel the pain of the planet, and it's not new that I've felt this before, and it's overwhelming, and it's very, I can cry. I have nothing personal to cry about, but when I get in touch with that pain in the universe,
on this planet, I just can't help but not to cry. I just feel, the suffering in my heart. So if you feel that, if there's a capacity to feel that, then obviously there's a desire to also contribute and try to help somewhat. And that's why my most exciting part in my whole teaching right now is this method that I've devised, that I've been working with one-on-one, but now I'm bringing it out to a self-help way so that people can help themselves. And I think people will be able to have those little transformations that would help them to bring to that power, to take the power back into their hands and realize that actually I'm responsible for my pain, I'm responsible for my transformation, I'm responsible for what I'm doing and how I'm living my life, and I cannot point a finger, I cannot blame anybody. So we need to come to that place. And when somebody works on themselves with this, then there is a possibility to come to the place of realizing that everything that happens in my life is a blessing because it's been helping me to become conscious.
So would you say that you're pretty hopeful that for the future, as far as that people on a mass scale are ready for this, or do you think that there will be a kind of a culling of the species to some degree? Do you have any kind of concept of the future?
Well, I had a vision, which I wrote in the epilogue in my book, and the vision was that there was a ball of light within a dark sea of unconsciousness. And the light represented the light of all the awakened ones. And it was quite small in comparison. But then what happened within seconds, with the speed of light, many light streams started entering it from all directions. And this ball of light grew to a place where, even though proportionately it was still smaller than the darkness, it was equally strong. And it was like there was a second of standstill, and it was like, who's going to win? Where is going to tip? Because this is how the world is right now. We're really, really at this point. What's going to happen? A destruction, or we're going to transform into a greater species? And in my vision, there was one last stream of light that was forcibly pulled into that larger ball of light, and the scale tipped. So one single person's light can make such a difference. And after seeing that vision, as a matter of fact, that was 20 years ago that I saw it, 1990, right after Osho left his body. And after that, I felt, there's not going to be a doomsday. Before that, I was really concerned about a mass destruction of human species, but I'm very hopeful that this is not going to happen. Yeah, that's my sense. It's not going to happen if we can really, really put that effort, and it does not require a lot of effort, and many people are ready. And this is all that's going to change. Nothing else is the mind is not going to change it. It's the light of consciousness that is going to make the difference.
Yeah, it's very cool because obviously this feels like the time for you to really expand what you want to do in the world, it sounds like, right? You're bringing it out. I feel the same way. I know that many people I know feel the same way. This is a time where now's the time.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So it sounds like exactly what you're saying.
Well, that's why you're here, you see. We're co-creating this. It's not an accident that you're here.
And the community is real. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Exactly. I'm looking at you, and there's so much joy that I see in front of me. Yeah. There's that. You said, do you feel yeah, I see a lot of light here. So that's hopeful.
Yeah, it is. I feel the same way. It's for me, this is my journey as well, like you're saying, and it's just to interact with you and other people that are doing amazing things and inspiring things. It pushes me along too. It gives me momentum in my project, which is, it feels great to be a part of that movement towards expansion. as opposed to despair.
That's right. Yeah.
Because, like I say, it's a struggle at times for me, right?
Well, it is a struggle because, you know, especially when you feel that whole unconsciousness around you. And again, it's people think everything in my life is personal. Nothing is personal. You know, it's the ego thinks about certain things being personal, but really, ultimately, we're all under the open sky. It's the same open sky.
Cool. What state do you have to put yourself into to do what you do? Where do you put yourself to heal?
I don't understand your question.
When you're doing your method on with somebody, when you're working one-on-one, are you the same person that you are right now, or do you put yourself into a certain state?
I'm the same person.
So you don't
no.
have to call up something or put yourself in a meditation?
No. That's, yeah. I think that the time for that has been useful, but we need to move on to a little bit different way of, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's why I like to put Osho too. What I've seen on I've read about him and seen on YouTube is he's not sentimental at all, it seems, right? He's now, and like you say, everything evolves. Doing 2,000-year-old traditions don't necessarily. Everything needs to be. Nothing should be static, right? It should always be evolving along with the species.
But exactly, and if things stay static, obviously there will be no evolution, and there will be no joy as a result as well. And that's why we have lacked joy for hundreds of years here, because we follow certain religious concepts, and they're always static. Those concepts are static, and they have no room for expansion, no room for celebration, no room for joy, and no room for self-exploration. If this is how it is, you have to follow this, and period. And if you don't follow this, you'll be an outcast. That's how we've lived it. And we need to look at how have we been accumulating pain. This is exactly how.
Were you born aware of being in a kind of an insane world, or was it something that kind of developed that you were at odds with the way things were?
I was aware of the insane world, yes, because the first thing I was aware of that I was able to read people's thought forms then, and realize that they're feeling something internally, but saying something else externally. So that was a mad world to me. Yeah.
How did you adjust to that? Was it something that you did some weird adjustments until you kind of later in life kind of opened up to bringing that out again, or were you fluid with that?
The only adjustment was to shut it down.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. Well, obviously nobody can help you because nobody understands. Yeah. And I was fortunate to have a grandmother who was very wise. But of course, she wasn't in my life for well, she was in my life at a very important point in my life when my parents were divorced, and just prior to that, and she basically, I challenged her about God, and I said, I was about 5 or 6, and there is no God. Where is God? If there's God, show him to me. Because I was seeing her pray every night before going to bed, and then so and I was really running around and, you know, just yelling that out, and so she grabbed a hold of me and she said, God is within you. It's within every human being. It's everywhere around you. So that totally made sense. So I left her alone. I said, okay, yeah, you're telling me the truth. It wasn't like somebody sitting there playing God.
Did you have to reach a certain low before you realized that you had to go back to who you were?
Well, the sort of so-called low happened in my early 20s when I moved from Russia to here, to the West. And that was a culture shock. And that's the first time I really experienced what we call a low, because I pretty much came with a very healthy ego. I always thought I have all the answers, so nobody could tell me something I don't know. And I always looked inside to find the answers. So I've always been an explorer and never relied on other people giving me the answer. And so the low experience was very much so in that culture shock. And I was fortunate it didn't last that long. And then I just, was thrown into the lap of Osho by somebody gave me a book, a Russian friend, as a matter of fact, in the building I moved into. She gave me a book by Osho called Beware of Socialism. And I just left, Russia at that time. So when I read the book, it just blew my mind. I thought, my God, how can this man sit in India and know so well what goes on there? And the way he put the whole perspective of socialist and capitalist countries and what happens and the freedom. And it was so absolutely right on. So then I started reading more, and I started doing his active meditations, listening to his talks on tapes. And basically that opened the door for me to start exploring myself. And, my education didn't matter. Studied architecture, I still love architecture. Education, left everything behind, just following I need to know myself. Because I did have those questions at age 5 when my grandfather died. Again, death is such an important point, it's such an awakener. When I saw my grandfather die at age 5, I thought, I'm going to die too. And who am I then? What am I doing here? So once we start asking those questions, suddenly we start seeing how much of life we take for granted and how much of life that we think is important is so unimportant. And then we still start realizing what is really important in life. It's the heart-to-heart connection, it's the love, it's the openness, it's the sincerity, the authenticity, knowing who I am. That's the most important. Everything else just comes and goes. Alexander the Great died saying, I leave empty-handed. So that's how the journey for me sort of continued. And then after I had my experience of waking up from the illusion of the ego, it took several years to integrate till I came to a place of rediscovering this gift of reading what's in the unconscious. And then I wasn't looking to become a healer or create a healing method, not at all. It just evolved on its own.
So what was your big impediment? Was it humility? Because you sound like you're a confident woman, confidence in your own thoughts and your beliefs. When you met Osho, what did he see when he saw you for the first time?
Well, first of all, he gave me a name. He initiates people by name. You ask to be initiated at the time. So, and I got a name that I was initiated by, and it was Jivan Mada, which means, Jivan means, and he would give a name, seeing your potential. And Jivan means life, and Mada means ecstasy. And ecstasy, of course, means stepping out of the mind. And that's what happened to me. Yeah.
Yeah, you exude brightness.
And that's what every person is capable of. Every person is capable of living that once they are in their authentic self.
Yeah.
Once the shells are dropped. And imagine a world, where
we're all bright-eyed and, present.
That's right. That's why I love the Star Trek series, because they have those, they discovered different species who actually live that way. Yeah. And this world has the potential to do that because it has all the resources. All this nonsense about no resources, it's a nonsense. There's absolutely enough resources to feed. We just have to be ingenious instead of destroying. You know how much food is being destroyed? Nobody talks about it. Because, they can't just give it away. Then the prices of food will drop. And then there's, how is the corporation going to make money? And billions dollars worth of food is being destroyed. So it's not like a lack of food. One seed produces thousands of more seeds.
So that actually, there was a question that I wanted to actually get, that I should, because I want to do a theme on this. How do we affect change in the world? How do you affect change in the world?
Be the change you want to see outside. We've heard this many times. And how do you become a change you want? By basically seeing your own darkness, seeing how you manipulate, seeing how you destroy, seeing how you compete. Because the nations compete the same way you compete with other people. Our individual relationships are no different from nation-to-nation relationships. So how do you change the nation-to-nation relationship? It's just a matter of critical mass. If thousands of people suddenly started looking inside and stopped what they're doing in terms of their competitiveness with other people on the outside, the whole energy will shift. As a matter of fact, when in Libya, when Gaddafi was assassinated or murdered, there was a celebration that happened at that point. The celebration of people, just the celebration, the joy, people stepping out of their mind. And there was a shift in the whole, on the whole planet. Because of that, there was suddenly a lightness. Not because Gaddafi was assassinated, but because the joy that people felt at that time. And when we look deeper at this thing, Gaddafi gave a gift, in a way. Because when he came into power, people rejoiced as well. And something happened. And when he was taken out, again, something happened. This was a very significant thing to see if people can actually celebrate and rejoice. Globally, the whole world will be transformed. So we need more celebration. But what do we do? What do we do with people who bring celebration? What do we do with them?
You destroy them.
Knock them down.
Well, Osho created this oasis of celebration. He did that in Oregon. Yeah. He did that in India. And what do we do with that? We don't like it because it hurts. Well, how can you celebrate if I'm miserable?
Yeah, they mocked it. Basically, he became mocked. The media mocked the whole movement. That's all that my memory of it was, of what I was being shown, was him driving in Oregon with his Rolls Royce, and everybody, all the locals who'd be interviewed, would all sound like, we don't want these crazy people here, and the media definitely gives a certain perspective, feeds a perspective.
Well, that's right. The media is not just around Osho, but generally speaking. Yeah. Media is only in existence because of negative news. Media never brings positive news, never brings anything that is of value to people. It only brings murders and heartache. It basically feeds people's fear.
Well, these are all creations of the ego self anyways, right? So it can only reflect, like you say, the discordance that it feels constantly.
Exactly. If people stop watching and stop taking, and many people have, they don't watch news. I don't. They don't read newspapers, and that's how then they have nothing to feed. So now you're bringing the new kind of media in, something that enriches the soul, that the person has an opportunity to look at themselves. We don't have such a media. Mainstream media doesn't bring that. So it's like all these grassroots, little projects like you're doing is what's helping to bring that kind of a new media into it. And sooner or later, when the corporations die, the old media is going to die. So then, bad news is no news. Just like now, good news is no news.
Yeah, it's an exciting time in many ways, isn't it?
It is.
There's a lot of big shift, a very dramatic shift. It seems to be all coming to a
Absolutely.
very intense
Absolutely.
period.
Yeah.